And I was thinking, yeah, this Wing Chun is like the best martial art ever. But now, after years and years of practice and training and martial arts, I would say that actually the karate would beat Wing Chun almost every time.
They completely miss the real benefit that you could actually get from traditional martial arts, which is not confined into just like some techniques, like some chain punches or some other odd-looking hand-trapping things. The benefits for me are not there. It's in the stuff that is sort of, it goes beyond the training, it goes to really to the physical body.
Building the body frame with different Chan Chuang, like standing post methods, and also these other Kung Fu techniques. There are actually way more productive ways of training for martial artists and many athletes also than just doing cleans and jerks with heavy weights in the gym or heavy back squats or heavy deadlifts.
You know, we can always think like, well, it should be this or should be that and has this legendary thing, but I think we need to look at the reality of what people are doing, because the martial arts, it consists of the practitioners, like it consists of the people who are doing it. Even training methods or anything, it doesn't exist outside of the ways of how we are applying it.
You know, when you're already at the high level, when you're already a good fighter, then you can try different techniques and try to see if they work in your style.
So when we look at one of the most popular martial arts, traditional martial arts in the world right now, it's probably Wing Chun. And Wing Chun, if I think about it, I can see like two kind of separate, like very clear views on it. On one hand, we have, you know, this very idealized martial art, which is like unbeatable. You have the Ip Man movies. It's almost like this superhero strength, and you have, you know, the Donnie Yen and even Bruce Lee and of course Ip Man himself. And then on the other hand, you have a bunch of these masters, Wing Chun masters, who are supposed to be very, very capable and showcase a lot of speed and agility. And at the same time, they get beaten by different type of fighters, boxers, Muay Thai fighters, kickboxers, MMA fighters. And it doesn't matter who against these Wing Chun masters are, they always get beaten. And so I think there's this very interesting disparity and this like a area between these other extremes where on the one hand, Wing Chun seems like totally useless. On the other hand, it seems like this magical, like all-conquering martial arts. It can win everything. And I think personally, like the truth is not really on either side. It definitely doesn't look like the, you know, the movie fights, like the real Wing Chun, whatever it is in whatever form. It's not what Ip Man or Donnie Yen is doing in the movies. But on the other hand, it's not entirely useless, like it's kind of portrayed in these clips where these masters get like beaten completely.
Yeah, I would say that in the movies, it's actually like in the movies like Ip Man, it's actually very accurate, like a demonstration of Wing Chun techniques. But the reality, it's like real fighting doesn't actually look like that. But it's actually, otherwise it's actually very accurate demonstration of Wing Chun. But the problem is that, you know, like you said, in the real fighting, it fails miserably if it actually looks like Wing Chun. But like there's on the other one is the fantasy, and on the other side is the reality. And I also, in the many years ago, when the first Ip Man movie came out, I was hooked. Like I thought this is the best martial art. I saw Donnie Yen beating up like 10 karate guys, and then beating up the really high level, the master karate guy in the end. And I was thinking, yeah, this Wing Chun is like the best martial art ever. But now, after years and years of practice and training and martial arts, I would say that actually the karate would beat Wing Chun almost every time. Because as a whole, the karate is just so much more complete, so much more practical, and so much better in like actual fighting scenarios and actual like under pressure testing.
Yeah, because there's always like, if you say like, well, you know, these people failed in using Wing Chun, then people always come with the argument like, well, they just maybe didn't know how to use it, or they were not good fighters. But if you look at some of the most popular videos on Wing Chun where they present the art, like what they have the central line theory stuff, they have the stuff they stand still, and then they have these punches, and then they have some like this trapping and the arm movements.
And like the sticky hands from Tai Chi.
Sticky hands basically is trapping.
That's from Tai Chi.
Yep, and that as even like in modern boxing you have like this, parries that kind of resemble, and Muay Thai they always grab and elbow people, so it's not even that unique, for the Wing Chun. But in the sense that if we look at, we can always think like, well, it should be this or should be that and has this legendary thing, but I think we need to look at the reality of what people are doing, because the martial art, it consists of the practitioners, like it consists of the people who are doing it, because otherwise, like how can, it doesn't, even training methods or anything, it doesn't exist outside of what the ways of how we are applying it. So when I look at these people and how they're doing it, it looks like the Wing Chun main methods, the chain punches and everything is like, it's a small part for a very narrow like a scenario in fighting. Like it can be useful like if you're in a very close range, or you just have this good opening and you can deliver so many punches. Like yes, you can find always an application for something like that, but what happens if you have more experienced fighter? What happens if there's a lot of movement involved? Like karate you mentioned, like karate is like amazing the distance control, whereas if you look at the Wing Chun, feels like it doesn't exist almost.
Yes, because if I look at like 95% of Wing Chun practitioners online or everywhere, they are always like a standing post. Like they don't have much of any head movement or movement in general. They're just standing and they're relying on their, the hand parries and the hand protection and everything else, that they think they're like invincible, that they're just gonna, parry one strike and then come with the most powerful interceptive counter or something like that. But exactly, like if you look at Wing Chun and the center line theory and everything, of course it has valid points, but it's like very limited aspect. Like even all the strikes, like they have like the front kick, then they have the oblique kick, and so on. And maybe the side kick also, but it's still very limited. Like your legs can kick in like probably like 15 different ways. And likewise, your hands can also move in so many different ways and strike. Like there's the straight punches, hooks, uppercuts.
So they don't use any hooks, or
I think
like
I
haven't
seen much, but of course, like I said, like 95%, like it's just doesn't work at all. Like even those grandmasters and everyone else, it doesn't work at all. But then there's the 5% who have made Wing Chun work. But when you look at those guys, they have experience and background in kickboxing, and when they spar or fight, it actually looks kickboxing with some random Wing Chun techniques. It doesn't even look like Wing Chun.
Yeah, I noticed the same. Like because I tried to like search, a bit deeper, and you find these clips where there's Wing Chun practitioners, like, or people who have it as one part of their arsenal, and they are maybe capable to do some damage in the fights. But every single time it goes to the sparring, like the real like traditional techniques start to go really out of the window. Like it just everything starts to become more and more looking like traditional boxing, Muay Thai, kickboxing. So that's another feature of it. Like you just don't even find examples of people actually like really using it practically. And if they use it, like usually it ends up very badly. So like someone mentioned, the scenario where it probably works the best is if you already have a background, like in some, maybe have even years of experience. Like Anderson Silva, we talk about him in a few times because we were thinking about who are MMA fighters who actually use traditional martial arts. And Anderson Silva happened to be one of the few guys who said and like credited Wing Chun, that it was like one of his things, because he was moving his hands like here, like this way. And I of course took like, wow, that's really cool. Okay, we found someone who's using this stuff. But you need to look at the whole entire context. Like Anderson Silva I think he already was a champion when he started to learn Wing Chun. And he was like masterful at different martial arts and all these traditional techniques. And he was unorthodox in other ways as well. And then he, puts some Wing Chun to it. So that's...
Yeah, but with many not just Wing Chun practitioners, but many practitioners, I see that they're like married to their style, and then they're obsessed to make it work. Like they just, I have to make it work, which doesn't actually make any sense. Like no one should be married to any style. Instead, they just should focus on actually becoming a good fighter and a good martial artist. And then, of course, then you can add different techniques from different martial arts and different styles to your style. And even Wing Chun, like the chain buns, it's okay. It's like I don't think it's much better than, like, for example, boxing straight like left and right, but it has some benefits, and it actually has many similarities to the Yi Chuan style of Chinese Kung Fu. This how you generate power, because all these Chinese Kung Fu styles, they're little bit, like mixed together, like different styles. They just focus on different aspects a bit more. And of course, some of the elbow blocks and the hand parry techniques, they work from Wing Chun pretty well. Like for example, in MMA, not just Anderson Silva, but Dustin Poirier, which is very good fighter, he very often uses the elbow block like this, and he's mostly from boxing background, but he still uses, because in MMA some of these elbow blocks and stuff, they work very well because you can keep the distance. But I would say in general, Wing Chun, it's just, in my opinion, it just fails as a martial art.
But that's what I was thinking, like, what is even the original whole purpose of it? Like, is that even the entire art? Like, I'm sure, like, the form that is nowadays practiced, it has failed. Like, that's very clear. And I'm just not sure, because if you look at the origin and even history of it, it's like nobody knows. And I think that's maybe the case with many martial arts. It's just legends and stuff like that, and you have no idea what was it really used for originally. Because I was thinking, like, standing, for example, in your toes a little bit in, knees bent, in this kind of funny looking sissy stance, like many people are like, what is that? It hurts your knees and whatever. But in Kung Fu, like for example, horse stance traditionally, like we are taught with Jiang Yushan, you keep the knees a little bit in, and it's for developing rooting. Like that stance is not for fighting, and people are, well, I gotta fight in that. But it's like very obvious that this stance is not even meant for it. So it could be that the art itself maybe was at some point much wider, and this is just a small part of it. I have no idea, it's a speculation, but like as it is now, it's so clear that it's so incomplete. Like how could you think that that's the most unbeatable style when there's not even grappling, there's no wrestling, there's no distance control, like there's no variety of techniques. So it's like, how can you even argue that it would be like very efficient? That's one of my things. And the other thing is that you talk about like, I'm not sure if you mentioned, but like if you have a martial art, you talk about the fixation. People get fixated on these things, right? But think about boxing, like what is it now, and then you compare it 100 years ago. Like it has changed quite a lot. Like the boxing looks very different, and the techniques that these modern fighters have is like it looks much better and cleaner than the guys back in like 100 years ago. So in boxing, it was clear that you constantly test it in the fights. You constantly test it and you constantly evolve it in order to suit better the competition.
And it's not just boxing, but also wrestling. Like wrestling from 10 years ago, it's different than it's now. And now it's more complete and more competitive and it's just better.
I think it's in many. It's not just boxing, but probably Muay Thai even, and the maybe even judo or something. I don't know, but then in Wing Chun and I think in some other martial arts as well, traditional martial arts, there's this idea that it's not only that you are fixed to the style, but the style itself is completely fixed. Like if you notice that there's an issue that you should correct and you should maybe develop this technique further, like you can't do it. Like it's like like you're not allowed to develop this, because if Wing Chun would be allowed to then freely to be developed further, like I think any martial art should be like this, the techniques would probably evolve a lot, and there will be a lot of new techniques, and in the end it might not even resemble anything like what it is now. But that's just an idea of like what is really even martial arts. Like it's not even supposed to be this thing where you just fix and this is it.
And that is to not say that all these traditional martial arts and kung fu styles do not have anything to offer. We actually think, like, if you look at modern MMA, it has taken like little bit of everything, but as a whole, it's very simplistic. It has like the basic boxing, basic Muay Thai, basic wrestling, basic everything. But if you want to actually add something to your style, many times you have to kind of take like techniques from traditional martial arts. Like alone, you just have basic roundhouse kick, basic Muay Thai, steep, and so on. But from different, like these traditional styles, you can get lots of ideas, you can get lots of techniques that actually work after you already have the base and the foundation in real fighting. Then you are like you talk about Anderson Silva, then you can start, when you're already at the high level, when you're already a good fighter, then you can try different techniques and try to see if they work in your style. And likewise, we think like the traditional styles, like karate is like amazing. Like it has so many working components that you can apply and it works amazingly well. But the same goes for many Qigong and Kung Fu styles as well. Like, and not just when it comes to techniques, but also principles. Like, I think in many cases, like the technique is whatever, but you can always take some very good principles from the ancient traditional styles in addition to the techniques.
Yeah, and I think you brought up like a bit of like a very good point there, that a lot of this, like even criticism that is toward these traditional martial arts that even I spoke here, you can say that the MMA, like MMA gyms, boxing gyms are also a bit stiff. Like they don't allow you to do like much different than the very like you're like this way and then you do these punches, like because we have trained in many places and usually that's like then it's also like it's very, you just have to go into this mode and do everything in a specific way. It's not to say like these techniques are very, how to say, refined and they have been tested, in the competition, so they definitely work. But you're also not so much allowed to, at least on a, on those like lower levels, you're not allowed to really think of yourself.
Yeah, there's no creativity.
Yeah, there's no creativity. So
and no freedom of expression. It's always like this model works, copy it, and that's it.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I think we have criticized also sometimes like, well, now the mixed martial arts is raised, as the highest standard of everything. And well, maybe at the moment it is kind of the best testing like a platform for your abilities could be.
Yeah, and even mixed martial arts, it's not just one style. Like if you look at UFC, there's many different, like Stephen Thompson is almost full karate style with grappling and wrestling. And then you see some of these other, like Damian Maia is like almost full Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then you see these other guys, like Sambo guys from Dagestan, they actually, their style is based on Sambo. It's like wrestling and grappling focus with very good ground and pound. Like even in UFC, there's not one style for MMA. It's like you have so many different styles and different focuses depending on the type and the personality and the style of the fighter.
Yeah, and going back to the benefits of like traditional martial arts and Kung Fu, which like we are doing, like we do a lot of Kung Fu because we see benefits from it. But for example, many people think, okay, well, I'm doing fighting Qigong, and because they're so like conditioned already to kind of hate Kung Fu and only like piss on it, is like fighting Kung Fu, you think you can fight with that, and it's you don't even stop and ask like what is it for, because the fighting Qigong is not a fighting technique. It's not something you use in the fight. Same way like I explained, a stance is like horse stance or even the Wing Chun stance. It's not a stance that you use in actual fighting. There's purposes. But in, for example, the Qigong that we practice and the Kung Fu from Grandmaster Jiang Yushan, like when we're doing these Qigong practices, it's very clear that there is a certain purpose that we are doing. For example, with Lohan Gong, contracting these muscles and
body hardening.
Yeah, and the body hardening, and it's not. It is no like fantasy involved with it. Like we know what is used, and we know what is lacking from it in terms of like fighting, because it's we understand that you need to have this pressure test, you need to do a sparring, and you need to master traditional techniques. So there's a bunch of things, but like you said, and we mentioned many times, once you have that thing, you have that basic stuff, you know how to fight in a way. Adding, for example, hardening practices, adding these refined, like let's say, mechanical kinetic chain practices or rooting practices, and these energetic practices, it can be very, very highly beneficial. And the hardening is one thing that people completely miss, and also I think it makes people misinterpret the benefits of some of these traditional techniques. Because even Wing Chun, like, people are like, well, you're doing this like arm punches, like this way. But imagine like if you actually have like very, very hardened knuckles, like real like, and I'm not sure if the original Wing Chun guys did hardening, but I think almost every traditional martial artist back in the days did some type of hardening for the limbs. And if you have like these mallet-like hands like Jiang Yushan has, and you're doing this kind of chain punches that kind of look like just arm punches or something, it still makes a much more damage than with your regular fists. And the other Kung Fu techniques as well. And I think this is actually one of the biggest weaknesses in a lot of the modern martial arts, is that people actually used a lot of time to just protect the hands as much as possible, like, and they don't do any type of really conditioning to really harden their limbs, which was like in ancient times, it was a pretty devastating weapon actually, and it makes a lot of movements, like it's the difference between like night and day, whether a movement works or whether it doesn't work.
Yeah, for like how we actually see Qigong and Kung Fu is that we consider it like amazing supplementary training, which offers also some unique techniques we can throw to the mix. But primarily we consider it supplementary training, like the hardened bone skill, when you harden the shin bones, when you harden your feet, when you harden your knuckles and wrist and everything else, and also the golden bell, when you harden your body, it has direct benefits in any martial arts. It's like it just makes your like limbs more hard, more destructive, and also more bulletproof when it comes to injuries. But in addition to that, there's like the different Qigong practices, some for health and joint health and internal health and so on, but also for some for fighting Qigong, which is like the Lo Hang Gong and Monkey Fist Door 24 set, and also the different 4 ends internal Kung Fu techniques, which are more for increasing the power and strength of your body and elevating your chi, and also changing your mentality and preparing your mindset for like different combat situations. Like we see, like it's like if you see modern athletes or mixed martial artists doing some self-massage techniques and strength and conditioning and mobility work, like Qigong and Kung Fu is like exactly the same, but it's not designed to be like its own martial art, but it's just something supplementary anyone can use, whether you are an athlete, whether you're a martial artist of any style.
It's true. It's not, yeah, and even beyond like the martial arts, like the specific or general health purposes, and the breathing aspect was huge for us. And one thing, like for example, even the relaxation aspect, like it makes you, I think, or it has made me like a much more complete fighter and also a trainer, like bringing some aspects that were missing from my approach. And I've mentioned like many times, for example, the stuff that the rooting practices, for example, and rooting methods and standing meditations, which is one of the, like I could say it's a very ancient like conditioning practice, because it's incredibly hard. It's like endurance training with these ancient methods, like the Grand Circle, even the Monkey Qigong and other methods that there are. And I have noticed like enormous benefits into my leg development and just being able to keep a better balance. Because, and these are things that I can notice even when it relates to any like traditional martial arts, or even relates to like trying like judging Wing Chun and its effectiveness and judging the Kung Fu and its effectiveness. It comes from just doing, like we do a bunch of training, we spar, we do a whole lot of pad work. So you can actually see like all the time, like what kind of requirements it puts to the body. And so you can kind of like really perceive very clearly, is there some benefits to the practice? And I've noticed like enormous benefits when it comes to the stability and holding good like balance and even force production for that matter.
Yes, and I can vouch for the same benefits myself. And I would say like many of these ancient practices are actually much better like supplementary training than most people do in the gym. Like this building the body frame with different, Chan Chuang, like standing post methods, and also these other Kung Fu techniques, and also what you see like different stretching and flexibility and mobility stuff from Shaolin Kung Fu, for example, and stuff like this. They are actually way more productive ways of training for martial artists and many athletes also than just doing cleans and jerks with heavy weights in the gym or heavy back squats or heavy deadlifts.
Yep.
Like I would say they're like just way more functional, way more practical, and you will feel just so much more increased agility, speed, power, and stability and everything in your body. But still most people, they focus so much on clean and jerks, and I don't think they even notice any benefits. They just, breaking their joints and causing more damage to their body.
No, that's exactly it, because like you said, like it's massively better in most aspects than what the traditional these guys are even doing at the gym, like what they're spending their time with. Like it's one of the most transferable things for fighting ever, because that is specifically what it was developed for actually. Yes. Like squats and everything, you can do squats for a host of different things. And all these different traditional exercises, bench press and such, people do. They were not specifically even developed for the fighting purposes. The Qigong, and I mean fighting Qigong, it's fighting Qigong. That is like the name of it. It's warrior Qigong. It was for the warrior monks who defended these temples, and they use it as like direct supplementary training to really keep their body in the best shape possible as a form of strength and conditioning and endurance and energetic work, and even like for fixing injuries and imbalances and ailments in their body. So that's a big thing. And what people miss now, if the people who focus more on these traditional martial arts masters who get smashed in all of these fights, they completely miss the real benefit that you could actually get from traditional martial arts, which is not confined into just like some techniques, like some chain punches or some other odd-looking hand-trapping things. The benefits for me are not there. It's in the stuff that is sort of it goes beyond the training. It goes to really to the physical body, and it goes to the performance of the body.
Yeah, actually, what makes you a better athlete and a better human being, and what makes you a stronger in every aspect of fitness, and what also elevates your consciousness and strengthens your mind. That's where the real value comes from. Like just becoming better as a moving human being, as an athlete.
It's true.
And as a martial artist.
Yeah.
And even these hard and bone skills, because most people don't understand that, like in boxing, you are not even allowed to hit with your back fist or even like the hammer fist. Like by the rules of the sport, you are only allowed to hit with the front knuckles. And because of this, like most techniques actually focus on just, hitting with the front side, because you are not allowed to do those other techniques. And because boxing has been the most effective and the most popular and the most prevalent combat sport, and so as a result, this whole thing has kind of like transferred to mixed martial arts and other martial arts as well, that you mostly hit only with the front side of the hand.
Yeah.
But if you look at many traditional martial arts, they utilize every part of your hand. And that's why the conditioning and the hard and bone skill is so important, because you actually harden the the back side and the different knuckles, and you also can harden even your fingers and the side of your hand. So when you do like hammer fists, it's actually very hard piece of like skin when you connect to someone's head or something like this.
Yeah, it's like a real hammer.
Yes, but because of this, the creativity and the possibilities you can perform with your hands, it can be much more wider than it is considered in boxing. But still, the fundamentals will be still the same. Even like when I read the book from Miyamoto Musashi, who was one of the best swordsmen in history, he had like 61 duels, which he won all, many which ended in death for the opponent. And he even used 2 like wooden swords just to humiliate his opponents. He was so good and so above everyone else that he wasn't even using regular swords. Like he was using wooden swords to make fun of the opponent.
Yeah, this is not a legend. Like this is a,
yes.
This is a real. Like,
yes.
Like,
but he also wrote the book of 5 Rings, and in the book he talks about the 5 attitudes of fighting, and it basically translates into like how you can hit and how you can strike. Like although it's sword fighting, the same principles apply 100% almost to like every other form of combat, hand-to-hand combat including. And in the book he explained there's only 5 different ways of striking, which is like from top, middle, from the bottom, then left and right. And he said that that's all. There's no other ways of striking. That's everything there is to it. And likewise, of
does
course,
it mean like head, like
no,
center?
from top to bottom, then
yeah.
to middle, like straight punches, or like piercing, like strikes, and then left is like from left to right,
like
and right is from right to left, and so on. But he even explained back in the day, like this is it, this is all there is to it. And likewise, in the modern martial arts, you have the same. You have the hooks, you have the uppercuts, you have the straight punches, then you have the overhand rights. It's the same attitudes from bottom, top, middle, left, and right. And the point here is that we should give up all these kind of magical ways of thinking that maybe you can find some secret attack or secret technique that somehow you can, overpower your opponent just like this. When in reality, the reality is very simple. There's like only certain ways you can strike. Like, of course, you can strike from left to right, and then you can vary the distance, whether it's like a long hook or whether it's a short hook. And then, in addition to that, you can change the angle of your strike, whether it's like whether you strike with the top 2 knuckles, or whether you strike with the bottom 3, or whether you strike with the backhand. But still, it's everything. It's the same.
So what you're saying is, you have the main attitudes, or nowadays we can call boxing techniques like hook, body hook, straights, uppercuts. Like that's pretty much it.
Yes.
And
and everything else, like different techniques, are just mixers of all of these same attitudes with some maybe different distance, whether it's close range hook or long distance hook, or whether it's different angle.
Yeah, if I think about it, it's only what changes is the striking point and distance, perhaps timing. Like you can find those variables, but
and that's why hardened bone matters, because if you harden this hand in different parts of the hand and even the forearm, you have more possibilities and more creativity when it comes to strikes, because now suddenly you can strike very hard with your hammer fist. You can even strike with your forearm and back fist as well.
Yeah, and every single like regular strike also changes. Like that's what I was explaining, how people judge these traditional techniques, and sometimes for a good reason, maybe, but they don't see that behind them back in the days, or even now, if you have conditioned arms, they work very different. Like they're not made for the regular use. And even like this, like someone mentioned, okay, we have the whole fist, but this forearm part, and you can see even like the Bas Rutten I don't think he ever even hardened his forearms, but he was able to like hit with this spar with like massive force, and he was like a very successful like a fighter. I'm not sure if he used this actually in the fights, but he showed that in the
but
video.
He used lots of these palm strikes because back in the day they didn't. Back in the day
they didn't have gloves.
Like they didn't use gloves or wraps either. So and they fought many times during the night. So after the first fight, your like hand was so sore. So everyone was doing such palm strikes.
like a sumo wrestler.
Yes, but if you had properly and very hardened fists, maybe you could fight 5 guys and hit them with your knuckles and back fists.
Good point. Like I'm wondering, like, did none of them like train like hardening back then?
Because I think they did, but not so much, and they didn't have the knowledge and the
maybe
methods.
Some Makiwara stuff, but
I think they did some Makiwara and some push-ups on the concrete and stuff.
Yeah, so I mean that's really I guess the thing that traditional martial arts offer a lot of benefits that are not always obvious, because some of them are just like pretty much like gone even in the history and regards to this like body weapon stuff. But what you really need to understand it, like in all of these martial arts, the techniques probably would like be very, very similar. Like you said, there's always the same. Like you just have, we all have the same human body. We have the same articulations. We can't really punch in some weird ways. Like we can't really change the anatomy, so that affects on the amount of punches we can do. But we can add a lot of variety to that with, for example, the hardening by distance, by doing different timing and taking like some unorthodox principles from the traditional martial arts as well. Like I think that's a big benefit, that you can get some element of surprise. Like we talk about this so many times, like in nowadays, you know the basic techniques that people will come at you. You know that what they will pretty much punch.
Yeah, and actually like professional fighters know this, that it's not even so much about the actual techniques. It's more about the setups. Like setups is how you actually land the shots. Like the shots alone can be very hard to land when the opponent is very good, because he can read almost everything you do in advance. So the secret to actually landing shots and the secret to striking is many times the setups.
Yep, this is another thing you notice if you just like do sparring with even remotely like experienced guys, or even some pro fighters here. Like you cannot just like expect you have this perfect punch and you punch that, but it's not going to hit anything. Like it's you need to have something like there, like, and that's why I think it's so important to have this like pressure test stuff, which I think, if just to go even back to the beginning of Wing Chun and everything like this, a lot of like these things we could have been able to like avoid all of these guys who go there and get beaten if they were even experienced in sparring at all. But like these people, they choose these opponents who have like who are completely like probably beginners, and they're like they kind of want to maybe, how do I say, like,
and they worship the master.
Yeah, they worship
so they
the
don't
masters.
Even, like, the master only need to do like this, and they already like.
Yeah, it's just compliance. I think is maybe the
they
word.
They already jump in the air and pass out.
Yeah, like this is like, it's such a wake up call, like to do something, and it makes, I think, the entire process of martial arts better. Like I already said, it's not the only measure of your martial arts to do, win the competitions. People always blame, hey, how is the streets then, and so on. But it is like one of the best ways where you can test yourself. So like, and that if you have any delusions about your skills and something, like go out there, you don't even have to go to fight, just spar against some good guys, and you will already like get a good understanding of like what is maybe missing in your game if you have any like this fantasy idea about anything. So that's like probably one of the most important things in just regards to any technique that you're using, whether it's kung fu or whether any abilities you think you may have or have not. So